Hello, welcome to the Jeffrey Chia Institute on Southeast Asia. In today's webcast, we will discuss a recent report that has made headline news in Malaysia and the region. This report is a landmark report in Malaysia, and it deals with the issue of illegal immigrants in the Malaysian state of Sabah. The state of Sabah on the island of Borneo has experienced a tremendous growth in its population in the last 30 years. In fact, the population increase in Sabah in the region of more than 300% cannot be explained by any other explanation other than a large influx of immigrants into the state of Sabah. In today's broadcast, we will talk to two prominent Sabah politicians, the acting president of UPCO Party, Datuk Madias Tangau, and YB Darrell Lakin, the Member of Parliament for the seat of Penampang in Sabah. On my right hand is Datuk Tangau, who is the acting president of UPCO, and further away from me is YB Darrell Lakin, the MP for Penampang. So gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to this webcast on this issue. I think most Malaysians, especially Sabahans, who are looking forward to this report. As you all know, the report was actually completed late last year and it was handed to the government in April or May this year, but it's only been released to the public just this month. So speaking not as a politician, but as a Sabahan, can you tell me what are your thoughts on the report, Dato'?
The report, the report in itself have its own limitation, but I'm not quite surprised the outcome. But I was hoping that the panel went further, probe deeper, especially on the individual who was alleged to have been involved in certain things, and particularly the witnesses, those personalities that were mentioned in the Vikas election petition. I was hoping that all of them, at least, be called to testify in the proceeding, and not all of them were called.
YB Darrell?
I can't say whether I'm shocked, I can't say whether I'm surprised, but rather I share whatever sentiments that Sabahans feel, where they are not satisfied with the result or outcome of that report itself, especially since it took so long to be publicized. We can see, just like what Datuk Tangau mentioned, there were little probe or little investigation done by the panel itself against all those people who had given testimonies, and I think there should have been a deeper inquisitorial inquest over the witnesses, and if anything on the RCI today, we can safely assume that there are people who admitted they were part of the Project IC itself. The report does not dismiss a Project IC, but those people have confessed that they were part of a scheme or Project IC.
Well, I think picking up from your point, I think all the media reports suggest or hold in on the fact that part of the report says, and I quote, "We can only conclude that it was more likely than not that Project IC exists." So given the fact that obviously there was a split among the panel members that they couldn't decide whether to make it very clear that there was a Project IC or not, why do you think that the RCI was reluctant in probing further on the RCI issue, especially with Project IC, and the reluctance to name names or the people behind Project IC? Dato'?
One of the, as written in the report, there was no opportunity for cross-examination. I think the terms of reference did not cover cross-examination. I think that was a major limitation. And but from the 5 witnesses, the report did conclude that there is a balance of probability, a high probability that Project IC existed. And on that point, there should be a deeper investigation on that part, because it was mentioned that the probability of the existence of Project IC is there.
Do you think that the reason why they came out with that statement that there is a probability that Project IC exists because they couldn't agree among the commissioners?
From my point of view, The 5 witnesses, they were quite straightforward. They even told you, actually, they even give testimony how it happened, what they did, and things like that. But on the one hand, those people who are alleged to be part of it, all of them denied.
Yes.
All of them denied, and because of the limitation of cross-examination, it was not possible, I think, for them to make a certain conclusion.
Right. Well, I mean, if you read the report, as I have all the 300 odd pages, it was very clear that the first, or the bulk of the report, the first 290 odd pages was basically a summary of the evidence. And I think it was quite clear that those involved in the Project IC gave very detailed description of how they did it. And in fact, they even went through the process. They did it, like coming to Kuala Lumpur, laminating the cards, sending it back to KK, and how it was distributed by some district officers and community leaders. But of course, as you mentioned, the interesting part, of course, was the fact that allegedly the ringleaders, people like the former Prime Minister and the former Deputy Home Minister, who has since passed away, when they, especially the Prime Minister, as Prime Minister, when he was called, he actually denied everything. Now, one of the more interesting parts of the report was that among all the political leaders, there doesn't seem to be a general consensus as to the actual number of PTIs in Sabah. Hari Saleh gave a different number, Yom Tetli gave a different number. I mean, as politicians on the ground, what is your best guesstimate on the actual number of PTIs in Sabah today? Because we've got ranging from the low end of 60,000, which nobody believes, and I think the figure 60,000 was given by a civil servant who said it was the number of ICs that was issued, to a politician who wrote a book and claimed that there was about 890,000. So in between 60 and 890,000, huge gap. What is your best guesstimate on the number of actual PTIs in Sabah today?
I like the word guesstimate. Anything is a guess, but I think any figures on the population in Sabah, first we have to look at the 2010 population census, which give us something like 3.7 million. Mm-hmm. And I was told that the real Malaysians is only about 2.511 million.
Yes.
So there's a balance of something like 700. But as you say, these are all guesstimate. Mm-hmm. And illegals is illegals. Whatever that's been given, I don't think so. I don't think you can lay your fingers to any of those figures.
Why be in your area of Penampang? What is your best guess on the number of PTIs in Penampang?
Before I answer that,
yes.
I want to participate
in
one earlier question.
Yes.
Why they did not name?
Yep.
The appointment itself was by the government through the Royal Commission, through the Royal Assent. I think those gentlemen, based on the after report, they tried to how do you say that? They tried to justify what they did by saying that they did not say there was no Project IC, nor they did not say the government was not involved. So I guess during the preparation itself, they may have had conflicts over each other, but all in all, they should have been more brave. After all, other than Steve Shim, all the rest were Sabahans who were directly affected by it. So I think they should come out in the open and say what was their respective thoughts. I don't think they'll be in breach of their oath in the commission by saying what was their personal thought over the issue. Now, going back to the guesstimates that you mentioned, I agree with that too, Tangau. There's been a lot of different numbers given. I think PBS and APCO submitted memorandums also, which mentioned more than 200,000 or 300,000. Am I right, Dato'? Yeah. Now, if these political parties have done their studies, I believe they are not far from, right. They are very right. The guesstimates given by Sabahans are probably 700 to 800,000. But I would say it would be in the range of 500,000 or slightly more than 500,000, more or less in the numbers given by the respective political parties.
What about in your own area, Penampang? Do you see a lot of PTIs?
Yeah, there are. Recently, I came across a school which is adjoining a particular land, which is filled with people of unknown origin. I've asked the local authorities to look into it, but I've yet to receive a concrete answer. And I would say, Penampang being the closest to KK at this moment, may have probably 100,000 of these people alone. Again, in due fairness, a lot of these people are workers, and that could couple up to the number.
What is interesting, Professor, I think, is the rate of growth, population growth, and the extraordinary increase population growth.
Which can't be explained by natural.
Scandals. I have brought this ever since my first day in Parliament, and I have not received any satisfactory answer. And when I appeared as a witness in this RCI, again I presented that, supported by literature from writings, claims by former state leaders and things like that. And we should be looking at that, the extraordinary increase in the population Sabah. And then there are particular time when the population suddenly increase. You know, so I think that is pertinent.
Right. A leading politician in Malaysia is complaining that, unlike the earlier RCI reports, I think it was referring to the Lingam report, that the submissions were not published. Basically, the report that is being circulated to the public now is the actual report, but not all the submissions given by all the witnesses, and not all the submissions given by groups such as political parties. He claims that 5,000 of these documents should have been made public. What are your thoughts on this issue?
On behalf of APCO, I could understand a report. Why? Because we submitted 26 volumes of a report. We did a survey investigation in 26 districts, and we published that, and we brought it to the commission. So if they had included all the exhibit, it would have been more than 7,000 pages. What we have done now, we have uploaded it in our website, and public can do. But perhaps there could have been key exhibit that should have been included. And one of those exhibits, which for me personally, I was really looking forward to, was the testimony of Hasnaan Ibrahim. That is really a material evidence of existence of
registration of
because we actually, for APCO, during the Parliamentary Select Committee on Electoral Reform, we have taken the written judgment of Justice Kamil, and we have put in there, and the narrative by Hasnaan was very, very interesting. So something like that should have been there. We something to expect because that has been mentioned in the court of law.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Why be Darryl?
I take the same stand. I think we are all almost electronically on the internet today. I don't see why the Commission cannot release all the reports into a PDF format or into a soft format whereby the public have access to what the public has paid for, which is the Commission itself. Going to Hasnaan Ibrahim, this chap is interesting. This chap has challenged the government many times, in fact the police many times, to arrest him. And when he gave testimony in the Royal Commission inquiry, I think his testimony, and I concur with Dato' Tangau, his testimony says it all. He was part of the Surat Akuan scheme, and he admitted he was directly involved with the late Deputy Minister, and also he had probably issued 100,000 or more Surat Akuan, and leading towards the issuance of birth certificates for these people.
Yes. The other interesting reports is that when you read it carefully, the bulk of the witnesses who were involved or who were detained under ISA for issuing false IC were the 2 points that they made, and this is consistent in all the witness reports, that they were asked to do it. And in part, they were asked to do it because they personally believed that they wanted a Muslim majority Sabah. They made it very clear that they felt that in the 1980s, Sabah was under so-called Christian government, as in the PBS government. And strangely, the report contradicts itself because the second part of the report says that even though that we have a very clear storytelling by all these individuals, when the police investigated the issue, especially the special branch only investigated the financial inducement angle. In other words, the special branch did not proceed to ask them, even though there was a clear political motive, as in they wanted a Muslim majority Sabah. Why do you think that the report sort of pulled itself back and decided to rely exclusively on the financial part of it?
when I appeared as a witness in the RCI, I presented two kind of exhibit. One is the book called Harisan of Sabah by Paul Raphael. And I pointed to the RCI, to the panel, certain pages where the former Chief Minister made certain very, very pertinent and strong statement. And I said the probe should be on this one, because that seems to lay the ground for a certain motive of Project IC. The other one is the thesis by Dr. Kamal Sadek, where he later on he published in journals, and he made the statement. The title of the journal, his journal, where a state prefer non-citizen over the citizen. And I pointed out to the panel, I said, this academic should be called as a witness and ask him, because he has done his study, he did his PhD on this, and this should be called. I think he was not called, but the paper, his papers was
Quoted extensively, yes.
in the thing. Now, if all those evidence, his research and things like that, in itself will tell whatever investigation done by the police, special branch on the file. You have gone to take an angle of the financial side, that was their motive. But whatever that's been said by leaders and then also research is there. And I agree with you that investigation should have, the police should investigate that part. And it's not too late. It's not too late for the police, and that's why there are police reports and things like that. And the police must act on that. Must act on that, and probe further.
Actually, I'm surprised that they never asked him. In fact, having read his thesis, he published it online. It's very, very detailed. And he went on to describe how the scheme started and why the scheme started. Now, I don't know why the commission decided not to, but name any Sabahans, and I believe there could only be probably 10% Sabahans who would not agree with this. There was definitely demographic engineering. I think the allegations were very clear. The evidence was very clear by the 5 witnesses that Sabah had never experienced religious division before, but there was with this project. And now we are populated by this new demography. You see, the Muslims in Sabah have personally told me also they can never really work with these PTIs who have become citizens because they have a different kind of practice, different culture. Whereas the people of Sabah, the Dusuns of Tora and the Kadazans of Sabah and the Bajaus, we have almost similar, if not like culture. So religion was never an issue, but what they did definitely changed our demography and have changed our landscape. And Dato' Tangau, myself, and so many others are going to inherit this. And I think we should fight on to make this right and find out the truth on who are the culprits behind all this. And they have been named anyway by the witnesses. And I believe there are more people who should be named.
Yes.
A police report was lodged by the PBSU then, when PBSU was in government, to investigate on whatever claim made by the former Chief Minister, Tan Sri Haris, in the book, Paul Raphael. But there was no action. There was no actual investigation in that one. And until today, we are asking the police to investigate his statement, because his statement is very clear.
But can I add, Tan Sri Haris, for some reason, has changed his stance by saying, and including Dr. Mahathir, he said all these citizenship were issued legally. Have you realized that? He changed his stance.
Yes.
And they seem to indicate that something is wrong with the federal constitution, because if they were issued legally, something is definitely wrong. It's unnatural for them to have been issued this citizenship.
We turned to the recommendation side, it was only a few pages, and basically the commission, in my point of view, said that my impression is that they were divided on this issue, they could not decide, so they said the next best thing is to hand it to another body to work further on it. And this is the commission talking about the permanent secretariat. As somebody highly experienced in the public administration of Sabah, do you think that a permanent secretariat will work? And just to update both of you, as you know, the Home Minister has already announced yesterday that instead of one committee, now they will be split into two committees, one at the lower level, one at a higher level. I think the key difference between the lower and higher level one is that the lower level one will basically consist of Sabah agencies who make recommendation to higher level one, which will be chaired by the Sabah Chief Minister and Home Minister. So with that sort of another bureaucratic layer on top of the RCI, do you think it's going to solve the issue?
One positive thing about the secretariat, permanent secretariat, is that there is definitely a problem in the mechanism, the standard operating procedure in the award of citizenship for Sabah. Why? Because citizenship is in the concurrent list. So all this while, when officers, for instance, process any citizenship application, at what point did the state government come in and put in their view, to say yes or no? I think that was not clear. So today, this permanent secretariat is jointly chaired by the Chief Minister and the Minister of Home Affairs. In my view, this should have been done a long time ago, these two, as part of a standard operating procedure for the processing of citizenship. So there's some positive thing in that one, in that sense. And of course, the people of Sabah, the expectation is overwhelming. As the report says, in the end, the people of Sabah was expecting that the RCI report is an end-all, that it will resolve everything. But that's why, for me, I said it's a new beginning. Why new beginning? Because you need to probe further, including the mechanism of awarding citizenship. And that is why I think in the past there was an ad hoc decision, for instance, to withdraw the Surat Akhwan, for instance, the use of Surat Sumpah, things like that. But there's no major what we call SOP. That's why if you look at what Dr. Kamal Sadiq is saying, he said, because there's a loose mechanism in awarding citizenship, and so these people abuse it. Instead of strengthening that part, they abuse it. So hopefully that part will do. Now, as regards the working committee, I suppose, in my view, when I was asked about this, as a representative from the government, I said, okay, the recommendation should not, we should not rest at what has been written. We should continue to ask from the public, members of the public, what to do, no recommendation. I suppose the panel was restricted to the recommendation based on the suggestion by the terms of reference as well as the views given by witnesses. But we should continue. This working committee should continue to receive recommendation on what to do.
I agree. The terms of reference are even in place for these two new committees. Yeah. Can I digress and
sure.
say all Sabahans concur with the proposals made from the government side and even from the opposition side on reissuing Sabah IC. I think this is the most pertinent thing that we need to look into. The report criticized, or rather said that the proposal by Tan Sri Bernard during his testimony was not convincing. Likewise, Yong Teck Lee on the issue of issuance of new IC. But I disagree with them. I'm sure Dato' Tangah also disagree. Every Sabahans wants some certainty. Not closure, but certainty that we need to get this sorted out. Withdraw the current IC, reissue a new IC. Although it's a gigantic task, but I think Sabahans will want to be part of it.
Yes. Given the fact that it is politically unlikely that this will happen, especially in the current administration, the current political climate, what should be the next forward step that Dato' was talking about, that you fully support the working of this committee? But the thing that I disagree with Dato' is that you mentioned that you are still not very clear about all the SOP that was done to issue the ICs. But in the report, it's very clear that two things were happening at the same time. And on one hand, you had the criminal syndicates who were making money out of the IC. And on the other hand, there was a smaller group very politically inclined group within the NRD department who was sent to Kuala Lumpur to do all the IC. So it seems that two things were happening at the same time.
That part is clear. It's in the report.
Yes.
That part. That means in the way how they abuse it, it was clear. How they did it. I'm talking about the standard operating procedures, how it ought to be. You know, for instance, I was a member of the. I'm a member of the Public Account Committee, and I was before. And we have called the Secretary General of the Ministry of Home Affairs, and he testified to us that about 15 to 18,000 of the holders of IMM13, for instance, has already been awarded PR. So I asked him, how was this given, on what basis? And may I know whether the state government concurred to that decision? So he said there's no need to report to the state government. And yet this is on the concurrent list. Even Sarokian and West Malaysian, they have to apply for PR in Sabah.
Correct.
Let alone these guys. And the state government has them. So it seems it's unclear. Under the Chief Minister's Department, we have a department called Bahagian Penyelidikan dan Haliwal Dalam Negeri. But what is the position of that in respect of the NRD? It's not clear. So I'm talking about that. So my hope is that this secretariat, they should come up with a mechanism, a foolproof in that sense. And of course, other than that, for Sabahan, Sabahan are quite apprehensive of the, sorry to say, you know, the staff of the NRD. They would like to see their own kind to be there in order for them to have confidence, you know. Some of our members, you know, native of Sabah, and they will be there, and then very soon they will be there, you know, they are transferred somewhere and things like that, you know. So that part. On the working committee, I think out there, people have a lot of their own recommendation how the thing ought to be done, things like that. And I think we should continue to open to suggestion and things like that.
I like the idea that all Sabahan should be leading this. Contrary to what our colleague, our friend, Minister of Urban Wellbeing and Local Government, Dr. Rahman Dahlan mentioned, Borneoization, he mentioned, should not be restrictive only Sabah, etc., because we are going to work in Peninsula, etc., civil servants. But I think he got it wrong. When Sabah and Sarawak made a deal in forming Malaysia, they specifically asked to Borneoize our federal civil service. So that was a one-off deal for Sabah. Unfortunately, it has never been fully implemented. I'm glad that there are political personalities like Dr. Tangau and so many others in the government who are demanding this. Likewise, we in the opposition also demands for the same. Now, in the case of Sabah, by putting all these Sabahans there, it does not guarantee there's no abuse, but at least it takes away that suspicion that someone from Peninsula will just do as they wish. I remind you, Article 15A of the Federal Constitution is the most damning of all. The federal government can just decide to give anyone citizenship below the age of 21 as it thinks fit. Now we can have all the SOPs, we can have all the concurrent discussion with the federal government and the state government, but yet they can still decide without consulting us, especially on Article 15A. And now that is the concern. Us, any politicians in Sabah, I think they know that there is a problem with this article.
If you had the power to do one thing short of reissuing the IC, what are the things that you would do? If you can do one thing, if you have the power to do one thing, short of reissuing the IC.
We both agree.
Okay, outside the sedition thing, what would you do administratively? Administratively, what would you do?
The reassurance definitely is a must.
Yes.
You know,
but right now, it's politically unacceptable to reissue because it will bring up all sorts of worms in the can.
Well, it's just like they are doing the RCI.
Yes.
Initially, there was a lot of opposition to RCI, but yet at the end of the day.
Yes, but a lot of cynics will argue that because there was a lot of opposition, the RCI was done in such a way that the report is not that.
Well, we have to continue. And our position is that the reissuance must be done. This is not the first time. The IC has been reissued at
Many
least 4
times.
Many
Yes,
times.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
4 times.
In
And
fact, the NRT director in the report mentioned that there have been three times it's done.
Datuk Tama and myself lost H, you lost your K.
Yes.
yes. So this one has to be done.
Yes.
It's not question, not politically. No, there's no such thing as not politically feasible. This ought to be done. That has to be done. The other thing, as I was saying, is that SOP. That's why I mean there are things in the federal constitution, there are things in the state constitution, and you will remember, so the chief minister have his own power of immigration. You have to use your
Identity
ID
card.
card. You have to
Yes,
apply for,
yes.
for permit in Sabah and
Yes,
things like
yes,
that.
yes.
Look, and then yet in the federal constitution says something else.
Correct, correct.
You have to look at this.
Yes.
You have to look at this, and perhaps the permanent secretariat can do this. In fact, in the report, the other option that was recommended by the panel, what do they call it? The consisting of professional.
Under the
Yes,
solution.
yes,
yeah,
yes,
under the
yes,
solution.
They actually asked for another study to be taken.
Yeah, another study.
Yes. Coming back to what you mentioned, it's interesting that if you read the report, right, one of the witnesses of all people, they asked for the director of immigration from Sarawak
Yeah.
to appear. And basically, if you read the summary, what he said was that he said there's no problems in Sarawak. And he gave exactly the number of foreign workers in Sarawak. He was even able to give not only the exact number, but the categories that came under everything. So obviously, we have a major problem. We're geographically located in the same place, two different states side by side. One has no problem, one has a huge problem. So given that's the case, I think we're all in agreement here that this is actually a political thing more than anything else. And given that it is a political thing, how do we overcome the barrier where one side thinks that changing the demography of the state can cement political control, political dominance forever for one particular community, and the other thinks that it is more important to keep Sabah for Sabahans. How do we overcome these two basic political
One of the things about Sabah is beyond all this political thing, because today, before the advent of information era, you can influence people and you can get all this kind of thing before, but not anymore. And in the information era, here we are talking about integrity and things like governance and things like that. Okay. But more than that, for Sabah, I think for Sabahan, the most important thing is security. If anything that has been created by whatever demography, engineering, things like that, I think they have produced a monster in security. Today, I think anybody, it transcends ethnic groups and things like that. The loyalty of these people will never be to us, will never be to the Agong, will never be to the king. Because when I was a researcher in IDS, and we did a study on this, and in fact, remember the enumerating team, we asked them, if you are given the opportunity to return to your country of origin, with fully paid trip and whatever by government, would you volunteer to go back? I said, are you crazy? This is my land. You are only renting this land. You are only renting this land.
That's their position.
I'm already in this state. I'm already in my country. You are only renting it. And Tunku incident have said it, everything. That is why for anybody, government, whoever you are, we have to zero down on this security issue for Sabah.
We have heard of the number of people in prison. I'm told that there is more than 60 to 70% of these people in our current prison. So that means the people of Sabah, Malaysia, are paying for their lives in prison itself. Now, if 70% of them make up our current prison cells, can you imagine what's going to happen when they come out? I don't think they're going to be reformed, or I don't think they're going to be, I don't think they're going to have any love for Sabah at all. I have spoken to some of these illegal immigrant workers. We see them all the time. We get to talk to them and we joke with them sometimes. In fact, they walk freely and then they say they're not afraid of anyone. Some have even said they were formerly militias, formerly part of the veterans of the insurgents and also war in Mindanao and in Sulu. If loyalty comes to play, I doubt very much that they will be loyal to Sabah, will be loyal to Malaysia. Security is definitely a serious concern. Recently, we have heard of murders, killings between themselves. Now in Penang, you have something like that.
Yes.
Between the Myanmaris, I think. In Sabah, we have them. And somehow our locals get embroiled into it. And I think security is number one.
In fact, the one of the witnesses was from the commercial sector and the local government from Sandakan. He made it very clear that in Sandakan alone itself, there's more than 30 entry points for people from the southern Philippines. He made it very clear that they know about it. Everybody knows about it.
I want to go back to something. Not only the 33 entry points or 30 entry points. If someone comes to Labuan from Peninsula, they exit Labuan to Kota Kinabalu via 2 entry, Sipitang, Manumbok, and of course Kota Kinabalu. I have never really heard of the immigration check there, other than the custom check. So that is another route, not only for the Filipino migrants or Indonesian migrants, but other migrants like the Pakistanis and Afrikaners and what have you, will just get lost into the Sabah system.
Yes.
I was with the minister yesterday, and some of these things was mentioned. So when I joked with him that, okay, under the next year's budget, you have 600 million. So I said, I need more than that. He said, for capex, for security. I said, you have my support. We will support you all the way for that purpose, because while you are going to, repatriate some of these illegal immigrants and things like that, but then they'll be back again. Yeah. So government, they used to say that okay, we have a very long coastline and it's very difficult. But I think now, more or less, I think government have identified all the lubangs, all these entry points and things like that. It's a matter of getting the necessary security equipment,
infrastructure.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming, gentlemen. If I can ask you to just summarize in 1 minute, what do you think of the RCI report? In 1 minute.
The RCI is a good beginning, another new beginning for us to move forward. For over 2 decades, so for me personally involved in the whole thing, it was a frustrating 2 decades, but this part is a new, fresh, a new hope, and hopefully the struggle from here, we can eventually resolve this issue.
YB?
The RCI report. I think they should set up a proper investigation committee made up of all parties. Yeah, it's a good start, but it's not really any start to me. The problem has been underlying, it's been there. They are trying to address it, but I think we need an aggressive approach. Without an aggressive approach, you'll just add up, and soon they will be calling for a report themselves, saying that they should be questioning how many of us are left in Sabah. Yeah, their claims over Sabah is still very clear. The Philippine government has not dropped it. The last the last inquiry I had with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs was, I said, have you discussed with the Filipino government to drop the claim? His reply was, whatever claim they do, we will always oppose it. That is not concrete because we are still paying a session fee.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course his argument did hold water. He said there was an agreement for session fee and we must continue paying it because as long as we continue it, we have not breached our terms. But we became sovereign on 31st August 1963. Nobody decided where Sabah should go. On 16 September 63, we decided to join the for Malaysia. So between those periods, the Filipino government never claimed us. Macapagal did try, but never succeeded. The Indonesians tried, never succeeded. So we must put a firm stand. The RCI report is one thing. An aggressive approach, locating these people and probably registering again all these illegal immigrants in Sabah so that we can give them working pass, proper working pass, and tax them. I think it's time to tax these people. they're earning a lot of money. You know, right in front of my office in Dongomon, Penampang, there was a small little money exchange, money transfer. It was a small little office, with a counter office where they transferred money to Indonesia and the Philippines. Today, if you go there, about a year ago, it is now air-conned with a LED TV and a really, really good counter like banks. And that would mean there's a lot of money that is flowing out of at least my district. What more Sabah? What more West Malaysia? So we need to be aggressive. Good start, but we need to be aggressive. Probably we need to put in really, really tough people into the game. And in the government, I think Dato' Tangau should be there. Tan Sri Pairing is one. Let him run the whatever committee he's heading. But we need people who are serious about this.
I need to give just view on that Sabah claim. I did my graduate study in the Philippines 1 year, and I think politically it's not feasible for any Filipino leader to address this, because it's politically very politically important for any political parties in the Philippines to put a claim. Any presidential candidate in the Philippines will never say that this is ours and all this. So it's not quite a straightforward thing. So it's going to be that part to continue to be there. I think if you remember the litigation in the Hague for Sipadan Likitan, they did participate and they was thrown out. Their partners, they was thrown out. But then again, if you continue to pursue this, it's only the same court that will handle this. But then, if you go to court, the decision could be either way. So what happens if the ICJ's decision
Goes otherwise.
Goes otherwise? What will happen?
I stick to the fact that we're sovereign. There's no dispute about it.
Yes. Well, I think that will have to be the last word. So thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been a really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.